I have a prop. My bag finally showed up, so I'm a few hours underprepared for this presentation because this was what I was worrying about. But so this is alls for macadamias. Now, you may have had macadamias before, but you might not know that they come in these shells and you have to take them out of there. Alls are a viable tool for opening them, but they can be very sharp. So if you use these tools poorly, you can end up using this. Does anyone have any questions? That's all I got. Okay. Well, I guess I'll have to go to my backup. So, Sierra. Pretty excited for this, right? It's got Siri, and I don't really know what else it has. That's all I can remember. It has a new desktop background. But, you know, there is one slide that I remember from that keynote last week. No. And it wasn't the whole part where we got to listen to somebody's iPod for 5 minutes. It was this slide. Now, did anybody notice, like, what changed here? I mean, Apple dropped hardware for the first time since Mountain Lion. And I'm not talking about my good old 2007 MacBook Pro. I mean, this thing's awesome. It could run Tiger all the way through El Capitan. Like, that's 8 releases of OS X. That's pretty cool. No. I'm talking about our dear old friend, the Xserve. May it finally rest in peace. It's no longer supported. So what do we do about this? I mean, I know at least one person in this room is still using an Xserve. You can, yeah. So, I mean, who cares that Apple's not supporting software on it anymore? I mean, we might as well just roll them back to this. It was the best release anyways, you know? So, like, we can fix it by rolling back our Xserves to Snow Leopard. Or we can fix them by spending way too much money on something like this. But I don't think that's the real fix for these things. The real fix is Amazon. Now, Amazon, they make, like, Fire phones and stuff. Who wants that? Now, to you, Amazon may be, you know, the seller of fine items like Tuscan dairy whole milk. $74 for a gallon, that's pretty good. Now, I learned something. In Canada, on the West Coast, you have milk in jugs. On the East Coast, that's where the milk bags are. So, something else I learned. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm not even talking about the badonkadonk. No, this presentation is AWS for MacAdmins. So, Amazon Web Services, what is it? It's the cloud. Like, it's awesome. It's where everything should be. But, like, really simply, in this scope, it's a place for running apps, processing information with some applications, maybe, storing some data, and then serving it, distributing that data. But I think, like, at its core, what it really is to me is something that takes care of problems that have been solved so many times in the past and lets you focus on what you're actually trying to achieve. You know, I don't really want to care about, like, what SAN or something like servers that my applications are running on anymore. That's been solved so many times. Let's do something real. So if you don't know, AWS is all over the place now. There's regions on every continent except for Africa. Our probably not a big deal in this room. There is a region not coming soon to Montreal, so if you want something in Canada, you can do that. Each one of these regions has multiple data centers in them in multiple availability zones. So let's say, oh, that sounds cool. You go make an AWS account. Now Wade already spoiled this, but you go sign in to the AWS console, and it presents you with all these options, and you're like, I don't really know what any of these things are. They got scary words. It says cloud too many times. I don't know how to use, I don't know what these things are, so I'm just going to go back to my Xserve. So the point here is we're going to take a look at just a few of these and how they can be applicable to you as a Mac admin, and then ignore the rest of them. You can use them later, but yeah. So the first one, simple storage service, S3. Wade already talked about this. So S3, it's a simple file server. You put files there, you can access them back later. That's about it, but that's really what you want on a file server. But the best part of this is that it's highly available and highly durable. So, that file server that you're running on your Xserve RAID, it may be highly available, but at this point, it's probably not highly durable. You can back it up, but you're not going to get that many nines, or it's going to cost you a lot of money. Of course, it's cheap, super cheap. At most, you're going to spend 3 cents a gig a month, which can add up if you put a lot of data there that shouldn't be there. But you can reduce that a lot by lowering your availability, so there's less online copies, but more the same amount of offline copies, or by using something like Amazon Glacier, which is completely offline. So anything you upload to S3 is going to be stored in a single region, but across multiple availability zones. So you don't need to worry about data crossing borders for compliance and things like that you may need to worry about. And what you get is just HTTP and API access. There's no native Samba or AFP. Yeah, you can't do AFP on S3. I'm sorry. You could probably do it. You could build it if you wanted to, but that would just be wrong. So let's do a quick demo of S3 as it would be applicable for a Mac admin. I don't know how to do this. How do you get out of H? Oh my God, that was really cool. All right, mirror, cool, awesome. So here we are. Here's the console, right? Here's all this stuff. Who knows what it does? We're going to go over to S3. So I already made this bucket. I called it MacDevOpsMonkey. So one of the key things with S3 is that the name that you give a bucket is globally unique. So it applies globally, and it's globally unique over all AWS accounts. So you can't go make an account called, or make a bucket called MacDevOpsMonkey. If you want one called Monkey Test, you're going to have to go get Wade to give it to you, because he owns that forever. So we can go look in here, and it's just, a monkey repo with a super old version of Chrome that I had on my desktop for some reason. I don't really know why, but it's there. So we can go and I was going to upload this stuff live, but it was too slow. So here it is. We can see on the permissions, I've given everyone open download access. So I can go click right here, and it's going to download this same URL. God. I'm actually going to go to icons so I don't have to download a whole bunch. Here's the Chrome icon, right? So I can copy that link and go to it, and anybody can go download this Chrome icon. You know, if you know how Monkey works, you can use this. If you want to be really cool, you use middleware, but I'm not that cool for this demo. So there's a Monkey repo sitting in S3. The problem this solves is you don't have to run a web server anymore. Like, I don't want to think about Apache or Nginx anymore. Not for flat, boring files. These are just there. It just works. You don't have to think about it anymore. There's many ways to interact with an S3 bucket. They're all going to go over the API. But that's another story for another day. So, like, there's not really that much more to S3. You can set up like a versioned bucket. You can change settings like logging and like get access log and things like that. But honestly, it's just a super basic file server, and that's what you want. I don't know how to get back to Keynote. Does that do it? Oh my God. How do I change my mirroring back? I don't know how to use computers. There we go. Cool. Okay, there's the demo. So that was S3. So we go back to the console. We're like, we can't use just one AWS service. Let's get another one. You know, so let's take a look at CloudFront. So let's say you're serving your Monkey repo out of an S3 bucket, but S3 buckets are based on an AWS region. So maybe you have it in like US East, which is in Virginia, but you have Monkey clients all over the world. So when they go to download from S3 and they're in Australia, it's going to be pretty slow. And that's a bad user experience. So with CloudFront, we can make that situation a bit better. So CloudFront is a global CDN, contract distribution network, and it's got over 50 edge locations at this point, all over the place. Like every AWS region has multiples, and they're not just where the data centers are, they're also in other places like in the Midwest, in the US, and a whole bunch of places around Europe, things like that. So you're as close to your customers as possible. So it's a forward proxy. It's like if you've used Cloudflare or Nginx, it's the same kind of thing. It can sit in front of almost any web server, including S3, which is a great web server because you don't have to think about it. And you may want to use this even if you don't care about the global scale of this, because its bandwidth costs are cheaper than S3. So you can put this in front of S3 and not really have to think too much about it, and it will save you money. AWS does cost money, but it's worth it. And you can use custom certificates on CloudFront, unlike S3. So if you want to, have a URL that's underneath your domain instead of having a bunch of random characters .cloudfront.net, you can do that. So a quick demo of this. Mirror Chrome. There we go. So I'm going to go over here to the CloudFront manager. So I've already set up this CloudFront distribution. I didn't really want to do it live because it takes like 5 to 10 minutes to provision. But what this CloudFront distribution is it's a domain name here, and then it has an origin, which is my S3 bucket. Now this has a special type because it's S3, so it's smarter about how it can handle it. But what I can do now is I can go, So there was my icon, right? I can go over here, change my domain name to this, and also get rid of that. And I can go get the same icon. So this is downloading from probably an edge location close to here. It may even be in Vancouver. I don't know. I could dig through it and figure out where it is, but it's going to be faster than serving directly out of S3. When I was downloading that from S3, it's downloading from Virginia. So, in North America, bandwidth problems are probably not going to be a huge issue for Monkey, but if you're in Europe, or especially Asia, it's something to really consider. So that's CloudFront. It's a simple proxy. There's a bunch of flags you can set on it, but pretty easy. Oh, God. How do you use computers? Use a separate display. Keynote. Cool. So CloudFront, really nice to have. If you're going to use S3, just use CloudFront too, because it's going to save you some money and make things a little bit faster. Back to the console. So we have our Monkey repo up in AWS. And that's pretty easy because it's just flat files. But what if you have something that's not just flat files that you want to serve? You need dynamic content, or you need to run some application. So the classic way to do this, and the easiest, probably, I don't know if it's the easiest, but the way that everybody does it is on Elastic Compute Cloud, EC2. So this was one of the first AWS services that came out a very long time ago. And it's a place where we can run things like a Puppet Master, Sal, Monkey Report, anything where you need more control, where you want a real OS. So at its base, it's just simple virtual machine hosting. You pick the size of your instance and where you want it to run, and that's basically it. You don't need to worry about the hardware underneath it. You don't need to worry about what the network's going to be like. You just get your instance and go. And it has pretty wide range of OS support. You've got Linux, of course. You got BSDs. You got Windows. And you got some custom appliances from a lot of vendors. So it's pretty nice. So Johnny Appleseed asked me this question. That's the default name in Keynote. It's great. So if you need OS 10 server, can you run that at EC2? No. I mean, you could probably run it in a VM inside something, but that would break the EULA and be bad. So here be dragons. Choose the right instance size for your application. So here's a couple examples. T2 Micro is a very common instance. It's kind of small, but can run a lot of things. Under $10 a month, that's pretty good, right? M3 Large, if you're running something more intensive. $360 a month, that's a bit of money, but of course there's no CapEx here, so depends on how your money goes. But if you go all the way up to the top, you can get this instance that's over $3,000 a month. It's got a lot of resources, but just because the X server you're replacing had 8 cores and 192 gigs of RAM doesn't mean that your EC2 instance needs that. And most applications really don't require that much amount of resources, especially if you're not running databases on your instances. So the best way to do this is start small. Start with the smallest instance that could possibly run your application. Start with T2 Micro. You could even start with T2 Nano, which is even smaller and even cheaper. And then you can grow horizontally or vertically. You could make your instances bigger. You can shut down an instance and make it larger at any time. Or you can make more instances of the same type and put a load balancer or something in front of them. So let's have a demo of EC2. H. Chrome. Cool icon. Okay, EC2. So I already have an instance running here. It's running crypt, but I need something else. I need a web server that I'm going to use to run some PHP applications. So I'm going to launch a new instance. So you go into here and launch. I'm currently running in Northern Virginia. And you can choose from a whole bunch of operating systems. These are all the default options. You have a whole bunch of Windows options. But for this, I am going to choose to run Ubuntu 14. So I'm going to select that. And then I can choose from all these different instance types. Lots and lots and lots of them. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. Because even though I'm going to blow these away in 20 minutes, that will just be silly. Also, if I do a large instance, it will take a little bit longer to provision. So I'm going to come and choose T2 large. Now, the nice thing about the T2 instances is that if your workloads on the CPU aren't constant, like they come and go in waves, these get you credits so that when you do have spikes, you can cope with that rather than provisioning to your largest spike throughout the day. Now, one thing to especially highlight here is instance storage. There's two types of storage. There's EBS, which is Elastic Block Store. That's like something that you would have in VMware, or like it's an actual disk that gets attached to your VM. Now, you also see things that have instance storage. Now, this is faster storage because it's on the actual hardware that's running your machine, but it's ephemeral. It's gone as soon as you reboot. So it's good if you have workloads that need to process data locally, but just remember that all of that data will be gone as soon as you reboot. So I'm going to come over here. I want a public IP. These all look good. I'm going to add some storage. So you can have as many disks as you want. There's all different types. SSD, magnetic. Magnetic costs half as much as SSD. I think for this demo, 8 gigs is fine. And I'm going to tag this web server. Cool. Now I need to put it in a security group. So a security group is a firewall that is allow only. Everything's deny by default. So you could set this up to be like all TCP from anywhere is allowed, but that's probably not something you want to do. I'm going to rename this, and it's just going to be called MacDevOps Web Server, so I know what this is later when I delete it. So I want SSH in, but I only want it from where I am right now. But I know this is going to be a web server, so I'm going to allow HTTP traffic. I'm just going to allow it for my IP for now, for testing this. I'm going to review this. This all looks good. Launch. I'm going to choose my public key, and we're going to initiate this instance launching. It should take less than a minute, hopefully. Now we can click here on this instance and see that it's pending. And that will take some time. So we can see here that the IP for it has already been allocated. I don't have an elastic IP for it yet. So an elastic IP is a static IP. If you don't do that, when you reboot your instance, you may get a new public IP. So this is my IP. I could get a elastic IP, but because I'm just going to blow this away in 5 minutes, I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to go to my terminal. And I should be able to SSH into this. Cool, yes, I trust that. Just don't verify, whatever. Just thinking. And then, so we're in here. It's just like a VM that anybody would have. And I can do anything in here. So what I'm going to do, because I don't know how to run a web server anymore, I'm going to install Puppet Common. Oh. So the images that you start with may not be totally up to date. So that failed to download a installer because that installer was no longer on that mirror anymore. We'll do we're going to install this Puppet Labs Apache module because I don't know how to install Apache and set it up right. And then we're going to do that. Wait for Puppet to do its thing. And then, in just a few seconds here, I will have my web server. There we go, cool. So if I go back to my web browser and I go to that, cool, I have Apache running on a VM in EC2. So I want you all to be able to get to this because I only blessed my IP in the security group. And this is a university, so there's no NAT here. What do you need that for? You just get huge allocations. So I am actually going to change this to allow that in from anywhere. So now anybody can go to my cool website running right here on EC2. I'm not going to go into how to set up web servers and all this. It's a VM. It's Linux or it's Windows or it's whatever you want. You can run your applications here and you don't have to worry about the underlying things anymore. So that's EC2. Goodbye. God, how do I? Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's EC2. So you could use this to, run your reporting tools or run something that's more dynamic. Maybe you need Tomcat for something. Maybe you need other Java things to run your Mac management software. I don't know. I don't need that, but maybe you do. Sorry?
Or Confluence. Or Jira.
I don't know anything about that. So, we can go back to the console, and we want one more thing. So, we have that Java application, right, that needs some giant database. And I talked earlier about how, you should scale your instances right. And, you can probably have your application server be pretty small, and then you can right-size your database server. Well, I don't want to be a DBA anymore. I've set up a database before. I've been a MySQL admin. Who wants to do that anymore? So Amazon has a great service called the Relational database service. I need more coffee. Or RDS. So what's RDS? So these are special Amazon managed EC2 instances that only run database servers. So you don't have any other access to these things. You can't SSH to an RDS instance. You can't do anything other than use it as a database server. Now, not being able to do some things is actually a great thing here because you don't have to worry about it. It just works. So it has a lot of support. So it supports MySQL, Postgres, Oracle. I don't know how to use that anymore. Microsoft SQL. You know, with these databases, it supports a few more, but like with these 4, you should probably be able to use it as the database server for most anything that you're running. And there's a lot of configurable options with it, mostly around the size of the instance that you're running, along with how redundant it is, and if you want like read-only slaves. So I'll do a quick demo of this. H. I'm going to remember that forever. Chrome. RDS. So, for example here, I already set up a database for crypt, which is clearly fake because it says no inbound permissions. But well, you can go in here and launch one, and you get all these options, like what you want it to be. And like, so you can choose the version of MySQL that you need, whether it's the latest or not, based on what your vendor requires. But like that's close to it. Like you get that, you get the size, which again you can change later. And a lot of things, your database is probably going to be a larger instance than your application servers. If you want it to be across multiple availability zones. So if the power goes out in a data center and you want it to still be up, that's what you do. And all you do here is specify what the credentials will be, and you end up being able to access it. I'm not going to go actually provision this because it takes a bit and it's hard to demo. But if you have to run any database servers for your management tools, I would highly recommend running this rather than running your own database servers inside of an EC2 instance. And this scales up really massively. So that's RDS. Oh, what am I doing? That's RDS. So back to the console, there's so many other services in here that can be beneficial to you as a MacAdmin. I'm not going to go over them today, but like I'm not going to deep dive into them, but the ones that I really like, Route 53 is managed DNS. It's a managed DNS service, which has a lot of great features. It can do health checks on servers. It can do latency or geo-based routing. So if you have, say you had like 5 JSSs all over the world, and you wanted your clients to talk to the closest one. Now you don't really want to have to like write some wrapper to figure out where a client is, and then it has a list of servers and it can go figure out which one to talk to. You can use DNS to solve this for you and just point at a single record, and then Route 53 can help route you to the closest and fastest option. So you can use that for like a JSS or Puppet Masters or Monkey repos if you wanted to run those out of EC2 instead of S3. things like that. My favorite service of all in AWS is SES, the simple email service. So this is a replacement for SMTP servers. It can serve as an SMTP server. If you need to send emails, it's a great and easy way to do it. My favorite thing about it is that its deliverability is really good. If you've ever had problems with a service sending email and it always landing in the spam folder because it's sent from like root at localhost, this can help you do better than that. You can talk to SES both through an API or just through SMTP. Now there's so many other services in here. I would be lying if I told you exactly what they, I would be lying if I told you I knew what they all exactly do, but it's a really good, like it's just really good abstracted services where you don't need to worry about the base part of everything. You can just do what you want to do. So here's a bunch of things that you might want to do and where you might put it. So if you want to use S3, that's probably where you're going to distribute large packages from. So Monkey, you can do this yourself. I believe Jamf can do this for you already, like with a cloud distribution point or something like that. You know, when you need to actually have some compute, you can put Sal, Puppet Master, JSS, or others up there. And then if you need a database, put that into RDS. And with that, you can, you know, maybe finally bury the Xserve, I hope. And that's all I have. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them about how I use this or how you could use this. Alistair. No,
yeah, so I'm not familiar with the uptime and SLAs with cloud services as much as I probably should be, but it said on one of your slides that the durability rating was 99.99999,
yeah,
but not 100.
Right.
Why is that?
It's what it's designed for. You know, I don't think anything could ever really be 100%, but you know, they do the math about the risks to your data and how many copies they have and where they are and what's the risk of all of those copies being destroyed at the same time. And that's that almost infinitely small chance, but nothing's ever 100%. So yeah, it's effectively 100%, but you know, I probably wouldn't worry about it.
It's certainly safer than anything you would do on your own.
Yeah. If you have data that you know you don't need that much durability for, you can store things in S3 in what they call reduced redundancy storage. And in that way, you get the same access time, you get the same speed, but there's less offline copies of that data. So, you know, for a Monkey repo, that might be a pretty good option because you have all these packages that you could, like, if it blew up, you could go get those packages back again from the vendor. So do you as a user or as an admin need to be paying for, you know, 5 or 6 copies of an Office update to be stored on Amazon servers? Probably not, but you want the access time to be fast. Even those reduced redundancies are still multiple 9s, but not as much.
I know Tim mentioned earlier that there were some tools to interact with this, like natively in the macOS environment.
Yes.
Are you mounting these repos on the desktop as a file system? Are you familiar with what those tools are?
Yes, so I know there's some Fuse plugins for S3, so you could interact with it just as any other volume. I don't really use them. I don't really use Fuse as it doesn't really apply to my workflows, but it's definitely possible. I think I think it was mentioned like CyberDuck and maybe Transmit can do it, but I think that probably the only way you're going to get it as a native file system location is through a Fuse like tool. Alistair.
Have you worked with Amazon Lambda?
Lambda.
Everything is serverless, right?
Yeah, so Lambda it's an interesting service. So what Lambda is, it's a serverless way basically to run some kind of processing against some kind of data that's fed in. So let's say you have like an email that gets ingested, or you have like a form that gets submitted, right? And you can have that data sent to Lambda. You can have some Python code. There's a few languages supported in Lambda. You can have that just sit there without having an instance, without worrying about an operating system running below it. So you can have data sent to Lambda and then the output going somewhere. It's kind of like if this then that, but you can put special code in there. I don't know how applicable Lambda would be for like a MacAdmin, but it's definitely very interesting if you don't want to run servers. And I don't want to run servers. I don't want to run them anymore. Like, we've all done that forever, you know? Anybody else?